We are joined now by Lieutenant General Saeed Atta Hasnain, retired. He's a strategic and security expert, and we're going to talk about whether the ceasefire is going to last in Gaza. Thank you very much, General Hasnain. What do you think were the key factors that led to this ceasefire agreement in the first place after such a long, prolonged conflict?
Mark, thank you first of all for inviting me for this program. A very important decision is being taken. The ceasefire will start tomorrow from 6:30 onwards at the GMT time. As to the question as to what really finally brought it about, this has been under negotiation for fairly long. And I think a degree of exhaustion has been reached. The Biden administration obviously was very, very keen to ensure that even while it was in power, at least in terms of the record, the ceasefire would be a part of their deal, not the deal of the Trump administration, although it has been completely in consonance in discussion with the incoming Trump administration at the moment. But I think the clinching issue was the level of destruction, the exhaustion, and the reputation of Israel, which was receiving an international dent at all times. Okay. And I think that is what has finally brought it about, because internal pressures within Israel were also building, as we are aware. Out of the 250 hostages, 99 to 100 hostages are still very much in the hands of Hamas. And that kind of a pressure in a country like Israel is fairly intense.
Indeed. Do you see potential challenges, General Hasnain, associated with the prisoner swap, this prisoner and the hostage exchange process?
Well, considering the fact, Mark, that there is a huge trust deficit. After October the 7th, there was a time when Israel was actually, sort of projecting Hamas against the Palestinian Authority, against Yasser Arafat's old organizations and things like that. But after the 7th of October, when they were completely let down and you had this heinous terrorist attack leading to 1,200 dead, 250 hostages taken, Israel opened itself up and carried out the kind of bombardment over the last 400 days. So that has obviously brought about a major trust deficit between the two sides. The Hamas actions also simultaneously responsible for it. So can that trust be repaired in 42 days of phase one, in which there's a temporary ceasefire, there is a prisoner exchange of just 33 prisoners among the hostages, and 30 prisoners of the Palestinians for each single hostage who is released, which means almost 1,000 Palestinians being released for 33 prisoners. Now, obviously, there's a lot of pressure internally on the Netanyahu government inside Israel. But if this succeeds in the first few days, the hopes will definitely start building. Phase one is the very crucial phase. If phase one goes through, I think then the trust will start building up. The second part is the humanitarian aid. 600 vehicles are waiting to enter into Gaza.
Right.
Now, once these vehicles start coming in, there's going to be very intense checks on the part of the Israeli Defense Forces, because they don't want the wherewithal, Iranian wherewithal, etc., military equipment coming in, which will refurbish the capability of the Hamas. Okay. That itself will contribute to the trust deficit. Indeed. And therefore, you can expect that there will be glitches here and there, and we'll have to be very smart to try and overcome them.
So you did mention about the humanitarian aid, and that's important. But do you see some of the restrictions on the UN agencies, for instance, being removed by Israel?
Well, the very fact that the Palestinian Authority has now been given the responsibility for the administration of the Gaza war zone as such, and Hamas is supposed to be removed completely from it, I think Israel will probably give a greater leeway to the UN humanitarian agencies. That's the only way, actually, we can start refurbishing the destruction in Gaza, ensure that at least the basic medical facilities, food and water and sanitation is restored. That is something which is leading to a major catastrophe at the moment in Gaza. I do see that there will be some leeway given, but the moment there is any breach somewhere, and breaches are bound to occur, you will find that we will have to perhaps renegotiate many times. Okay. Therefore, Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, the three countries which have sponsored the ceasefire, will have to be very, very sort of energetic in terms of their diplomacy to make sure that this doesn't break down anytime.
But what about the political landscape in both Israel and Gaza? Do you see Hamas being replaced? Do you see perhaps that Netanyahu will get weaker? I mean, with the Trump administration in place, do you think that maybe, there could be some sort of a change of guard?
Well, that would be something which would automatically be expected, but I don't think that's going to happen overnight anytime. Netanyahu is very well in his place at the moment, although there's a tremendous amount of opposition to the ceasefire from the far right-wing parties within Israel. Even the Israeli cabinet had major differences within them, and it's only by a very, very small vote that the whole resolution on the ceasefire was actually passed. But I do see that the coming of Trump and Netanyahu get along very well. I do see that the other players within the Trump administration, older players who have worked on the Abraham Accords and things like that, they are all going to be there. And I do therefore see that Netanyahu will probably carry on for some more time, as long as he can before the investigations and his corruption cases come up against him. Hamas, as far as Hamas is concerned, hugely weakened. Iran will make lots of efforts definitely to try and refurbish them, but the routes are cut off. You have access from the sea, which is under a fair amount of control of Israel. This is going to be a difficult call as far as Hamas is concerned, but Hamas still remains the main fighting element of the Palestinians. Within the Palestinian Authority, the PLO no longer occupies that kind of space. So I don't think Hamas is going anywhere. They're still going to be very much there.
Finally, how important is international support, in the reconstruction efforts once we reach there, as well as in ensuring that the ceasefire holds for the long term?
Well, first of all, I think a major assessment has to be carried out as to what is the degree of reconstruction which is required. That will probably run into a couple of $1 billion. The Arab states are all pitching in very early. I suppose lots of from the developed world, the European countries, the United States itself, all will perhaps pitch in too. But it's going to take a fair amount of time. It's an area of about 35 kilometers by 20 kilometers with almost the entire infrastructure razed to the ground. That means it's something much more than what perhaps Berlin was after World War II. So we are going to see a long haul as far as the reconstruction is concerned.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, General Atta Hasnain. Thank you for joining us and helping us understand this in depth.